Under the dim light of a crescent moon, a young girl named Adana wandered the crowded streets of Lagos. The city was alive with the hum of distant music, chatter, and the occasional honk of a car horn, but Adana felt utterly alone. She had been orphaned at the age of 6 when a terrible illness swept through her village, claiming her parents' lives. The streets had become her home, a harsh teacher in survival, but her soul remained unbroken, guided by the faint hope of a better tomorrow. One cold evening, as she huddled beneath a worn-out blanket, she caught the eye of a passerby, a wealthy businessman named Chief Olawu. He was a tall man with broad shoulders, known throughout Lagos for his wisdom and generosity. Chief Olawu had everything: wealth, power, and a beautiful daughter named Ife, but his heart was heavy with an unspoken sorrow. As his eyes met Adana's, something within him stirred. He saw not just a homeless child but a spirit that refused to be crushed by the weight of the world. Without hesitation, Chief Olawu approached Adana, kneeling beside her. "My child," he said softly, "what is your name?" "Adana," she whispered, her voice hoarse from lack of use. "You should not be out here alone," Chief Olawu continued, his voice filled with a mix of concern and resolve. "Come with me. From now on, you will be my daughter." Adana's eyes widened in disbelief. Could this be real? Could her days of hunger and fear finally be over? The chief gently lifted Adana into his car, and for the first time in years, she felt the warmth of safety. Yet, as they drove through the illuminated streets toward his grand mansion, Adana could not shake the feeling that this new life would come with its own set of challenges. Chief Olawu's mansion was more magnificent than anything Adana had ever seen. The gates were adorned with intricate carvings, and the driveway stretched far into the distance, flanked by towering palm trees. As they pulled up to the grand entrance, the heavy wooden doors swung open to reveal a foyer gleaming with marble floors and crystal chandeliers. Adana's heart pounded as she stepped out of the car, overwhelmed by the grandeur. The chief smiled at her, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. "Welcome home, my daughter," he said, his voice echoing in the vast space. Inside, the staff greeted them with deep bows, their eyes curious about the new arrival. Among them stood Ife, the chief's biological daughter. Ife was a strikingly beautiful girl, with smooth skin and bright eyes that mirrored her father's. Yet, as she observed Adana, her expression turned cold. "Father, who is this?" Ife asked, her voice laced with suspicion. "This is Adana," Chief Olawu replied warmly. "She will be living with us from now on, as my daughter." Ife's smile faltered, though she quickly masked it with a polite nod. "Welcome, Adana," she said, but her tone was far from welcoming. Adana, sensing the tension, offered a shy smile in return. She didn't know what to expect from Ife, but she hoped that they could become sisters. After all, she had never had a sibling, and the thought of having someone to share her new life with was comforting. The days that followed were a whirlwind for Adana. She was given new clothes, a soft bed to sleep in, and 3 meals a day. The chief spent time with her, teaching her about the world, encouraging her to pursue her education, and showing her the love she had longed for. But not everything was perfect. Ife, who had once been the sole focus of her father's affection, began to grow increasingly jealous. She watched with growing resentment as her father showered Adana with attention, teaching her how to read, taking her on outings, and proudly introducing her as his daughter. The love and kindness that Ife had once taken for granted now seemed to be slipping away, replaced by a growing fear that she was being replaced. And so, beneath the surface of this newfound family, the seeds of discord began to take root. As weeks turned into months, Adana grew more comfortable in her new life, but Ife's resentment festered like a wound. Each time she saw her father smile at Adana, a pang of jealousy shot through her heart. She began to distance herself from Adana, avoiding her whenever possible, and when they did interact, Ife's words were often laced with thinly veiled hostility. Why do you follow father around like a lost puppy? Ife would sneer. You should know your place. Adana, who had once hoped to find a sister in Ife, was hurt by her coldness. She tried to win Ife over, helping her with her chores, complimenting her, and sharing stories from her past. But no matter how hard she tried, Ife remained distant, her heart hardened by jealousy. Chief Olawu was oblivious to the growing rift between the girls. He was often away on business, and when he was home, he was too caught up in his responsibilities to notice the tension that simmered beneath the surface. To him, everything seemed perfect. He was proud of the way Adana had adjusted to her new life, and he was confident that Ife would eventually come to accept her as a sister. But Ife had other plans. One evening, as the family gathered for dinner, Ife made a subtle move to undermine Adana. The meal was a lavish affair, as always, with a spread of traditional Nigerian dishes laid out on the table. As the chief praised Adana for her progress in her studies, Ife couldn't resist the urge to stir the pot. "Father," Ife began, her voice sweet and innocent, "I heard that Adana didn't do so well on her last exam. Perhaps she's not as gifted as you think." The comment was a lie, but it was enough to plant a seed of doubt in Chief Olawu's mind. He turned to Adana, his brows furrowed in concern. "Is this true, Adana?" he asked. Adana's heart sank. She had worked hard and had done well on her exam, but Ife's words made her feel as though she had somehow failed. "No, father," she said quietly. "I did well on the exam." Chief Olawu nodded, relieved, but the damage was done. Ife's words had created a crack in the foundation of trust between Adana and the chief, and she knew it. Ife, satisfied with the small victory, smiled to herself. This was just the beginning. She would not let Adana take her place in her father's heart without a fight. The mansion, with all its luxury, began to feel more like a prison to Adana. Despite the love she received from Chief Olawu, Ife's subtle cruelty was a constant reminder that she did not truly belong. Ife's words, always wrapped in sweetness but filled with venom, were slowly chipping away at Adana's confidence. One afternoon, as Adana was helping the housemaid clean the grand living room, she overheard a conversation between the maids. They spoke in hushed tones, not realizing that Adana was nearby. "Did you hear about Ife?" one maid whispered. "She's been saying terrible things about Adana to the chief. She's trying to make him doubt her." "That poor girl," another maid replied. "She doesn't deserve this." "But what can we do? Ife is the chief's daughter, after all." Adana's heart sank as she realized that Ife's behavior was even worse than she had imagined. It wasn't just the coldness or the occasional sharp remark, Ife was actively trying to turn Chief Olawu against her. The realization hit Adana like a blow, and she felt the weight of Ife's jealousy crushing her spirit. But Adana was not one to give up easily. She had survived on the streets of Lagos, and she knew how to fight for her survival. This time, however, the battle was not for food or shelter, but for the love and acceptance of the man who had saved her from a life of despair. As she sat alone in her room that evening, Adana made a decision. She would not allow Ife to push her out of this family. She would fight for her place, not with lies or deceit, but with truth and kindness. She would prove to Chief Olawu that she was worthy of his love, not by tearing down Ife, but by rising above her jealousy and hatred. With a renewed sense of purpose, Adana set out to strengthen her bond with Chief Olawu. She worked harder in her studies, learned the ways of the household, and made it her mission to bring joy to those around her. She helped the maids with their chores, played with the younger children in the village, and even began to learn the traditional dances and songs that were part of her heritage. But all the while, Ife watched with growing anger. The more Adana shone, the more threatened Ife felt. And so, Ife began to hatch a plan that would not only drive Adana out of the mansion but also ensure that she would never return. Ife's jealousy had grown into a dark, consuming force that clouded her judgment. She was no longer content with simply undermining Adana, she wanted to see her gone for good. The plan that had been forming in her mind was risky, but the thought of getting rid of Adana for good was too tempting to resist. One evening, as the mansion settled into the quiet rhythm of night, Ife slipped into her father's study. The room was dimly lit, the shelves lined with books and documents that detailed the chief's vast business empire. In the corner, a large safe stood, its contents protected by a combination only the chief knew. Ife's heart raced as she approached the desk, where her father's official seal and a stack of important papers lay. Among them were documents related to a significant business deal, one that the chief had been working on for months. Ife knew that this deal was crucial to her father's business, and any disruption could cause chaos. With trembling hands, Ife took one of the documents and carefully forged Adana's signature at the bottom, using a pen that had been left on the desk. She knew it was a dangerous move, but she was desperate. If the deal fell through and her father found out that Adana's name was on the document, he would have no choice but to send her away. The next morning, the household was bustling as usual, but Ife was unusually quiet. She watched with bated breath as the chief prepared to leave for his office, the forged document tucked safely into his briefcase. Adana, unaware of the storm that was about to break over her, smiled warmly at the chief as he kissed her on the forehead before heading out. Hours passed, and Ife waited anxiously for the fallout. When the phone finally rang in the late afternoon, she felt a jolt of fear mixed with excitement. The call was from her father's office. "Adana," the butler called out as he answered the phone. "The chief wants to speak with you." Adana, who had been reading in the living room, stood up, puzzled. She took the phone from the butler, her heart pounding as she heard her father's voice on the other end. "Adana, did you sign any documents related to the Amodi deal?" Chief Olawu's voice was calm, but there was an undercurrent of concern. Adana's mind raced. "No, father, I didn't. I would never do that without your permission." There was a pause on the other end, and Adana felt a knot of fear tighten in her stomach. "I believe you, Adana," the chief finally said. "But someone has used your name to interfere with this deal. I'm coming home now. We need to talk." As Adana hung up the phone, she felt a cold wave of dread wash over her. She knew that this was Ife's doing, but proving it would be difficult. Ife had played her hand well, and now the fate of Adana's place in the family hung in the balance. Chief Olawu returned home with a heavy heart. The forged signature had not only jeopardized the business deal but also cast a shadow of doubt over Adana's integrity. He couldn't believe that the girl he had taken in, the girl he had grown to love as his own, would betray him in such a way. Yet, something in his heart told him that Adana was telling the truth. As he walked through the grand entrance of his mansion, he was greeted by a solemn Adana and a smug Ife, who was careful to hide her satisfaction. "Let's go to the study," Chief Olawu said, his voice firm. "We need to get to the bottom of this." In the study, the atmosphere was tense. Adana stood with her hands clasped in front of her, her eyes downcast, while Ife watched from the corner, pretending to be concerned. "Adana," the chief began, "I want to believe you, but I need to know how your signature ended up on that document. Can you explain?" Adana looked up, her eyes filled with determination. "Father, I swear to you, I did not sign that document. I would never do anything to hurt you or your business. Someone must have forged my signature." Ife's eyes narrowed as she listened to Adana's defense. She had hoped that Adana would crumble under the pressure, but instead, she was standing her ground. Ife realized that she needed to act quickly if she wanted her plan to succeed. "Father," Ife interjected, her voice soft but insistent, "perhaps Adana doesn't even realize what she's done. Maybe someone tricked her into signing it without her knowing." Chief Olawu turned to Ife, his eyes filled with a mixture of surprise and suspicion. "What are you suggesting, Ife?" Ife hesitated for a moment, then continued, "Maybe someone from the office brought the document to her, and she signed it without understanding what it was. It's not her fault, but it still happened." Adana's eyes widened in shock. "That's not true," she exclaimed. "I never signed anything." "Ife, why are you lying?" Chief Olawu held up his hand to silence them. He was torn between his two daughters, one who had been with him since birth, and the other who had brought a new light into his life. But as he looked into Adana's eyes, he saw a truth that could not be denied. "Ife," he said slowly, "are you sure you're telling me everything?" Ife's heart raced as she realized that her father was beginning to doubt her. She had always been able to manipulate situations to her advantage, but this time, she had pushed too far. "Father, I just want to help," Ife said, her voice faltering. "I'm worried about the family, that's all." Chief Olawu studied his daughter closely, his mind racing. He had seen Ife's jealousy before, but he had always dismissed it as normal sibling rivalry. Now, he wondered if he had been too blind, too trusting. "I'll have the document analyzed," Chief Olawu finally said. "We'll see who really signed it." The room fell silent as the weight of his words sank in. Ife's plan was unraveling, and she knew it. Adana, on the other hand, felt a flicker of hope. She had faith that the truth would come out, and when it did, she hoped that her place in the family would be secure. The following days were filled with an uneasy tension that hung over the mansion like a dark cloud. Chief Olawu had sent the document to a trusted handwriting expert, and the entire household waited anxiously for the results. Ife tried to keep her composure, but the fear of being exposed gnawed at her. Adana, on the other hand, focused on maintaining her usual routines. She spent time with the household staff, continued her studies, and even made an effort to reach out to Ife, despite the growing animosity between them. But Ife remained distant, her coldness a barrier that Adana could not breach. Finally, the day came when the results were delivered. Chief Olawu gathered both girls in his study, the atmosphere thick with anticipation. "The handwriting expert has confirmed," Chief Olawu began, his voice steady, "that the signature on the document was forged. And it was not done by Adana." Adana let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. Relief washed over her, but it was tempered by the knowledge that this would not end well for Ife. Chief Olawu turned to Ife, his expression grave. "Ife, do you have anything to say?" Ife's face paled as the reality of her situation set in. She had been caught, and there was no escaping it. But instead of admitting her wrongdoing, she doubled down. "Father, I didn't mean for this to happen," Ife stammered, tears welling up in her eyes. "I was just so afraid of losing you. You've been spending so much time with Adana, and I felt like you were forgetting about me." Chief Olawu's expression softened, but the disappointment in his eyes was clear. "Ife, I will always love you. You are my daughter, and nothing can change that. But what you did was wrong, very wrong. You tried to hurt Adana, and in doing so, you hurt this family." Ife broke down in tears, the weight of her actions crashing down on her. "I'm sorry, Father. I'm so sorry." Adana watched, her heart aching for Ife. Despite everything, she understood the pain that Ife was feeling. She stepped forward, placing a hand on Ife's shoulder. "Ife," Adana said gently, "I don't want to take your place. There's enough love in this family for both of us. We can be sisters, if you let me." Ife looked up, her tear-streaked face filled with surprise. She had expected anger, rejection, but instead, Adana was offering her forgiveness. It was more than she deserved, but it was exactly what she needed. "I don't deserve your kindness," Ife whispered, her voice choked with emotion. We all make mistakes, Adana replied. What matters is that we learn from them and try to be better. Chief Olawu watched the exchange with a mixture of pride and sorrow. His daughters, both of them, had a long road ahead, but this was a start. We'll move forward as a family, Chief Owu said, his voice resolute. Together. In the weeks that followed, the tension in the mansion began to ease. Ife, deeply ashamed of her actions, made a sincere effort to change. She started spending more time with Adana, slowly building the bond they had both longed for but had been too afraid to nurture. Chief Olawu, relieved to see the girls getting along, decided to take them on a trip to their ancestral village. He believed that reconnecting with their roots would help them heal and grow closer as a family. The village, nestled in the heart of the Nigerian countryside, was a world away from the bustling streets of Lagos. It was a place where the land was rich with history, and the air was filled with the wisdom of generations past. As the car wound its way through the narrow, dusty roads, Adana felt a sense of peace wash over her. The sight of the lush green fields, the sound of birds singing in the trees, and the smell of the earth brought back memories of her childhood before tragedy struck. She had been too young to understand the significance of her heritage back then, but now, she was eager to learn more about the culture and traditions that had shaped her parents' lives. When they arrived at the village, they were greeted with warmth and hospitality. The elders, who had known Chief Olawu since he was a boy, welcomed him and his daughters with open arms. They were particularly taken with Adana, recognizing in her the same strength and resilience that had defined her parents. During their stay, the girls participated in the village's daily activities. They learned how to weave baskets, prepare traditional meals, and even took part in the vibrant dances that told the stories of their ancestors. Adana embraced these experiences wholeheartedly, eager to immerse herself in the rich tapestry of her heritage. Ife, initially hesitant, found herself gradually drawn into the rhythms of village life. The simplicity and sincerity of the people touched her in a way she hadn't expected. She began to see Adana not as a rival, but as a sister with whom she shared a deep, unspoken connection. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, casting a golden glow over the village, Ife and Adana sat together under a large baobab tree. The air was cool, and the sounds of the village were a comforting backdrop to their conversation. I was wrong about you, Adana, Ife admitted, her voice quiet but sincere. I was so afraid of losing father's love that I couldn't see how much you've lost too. I'm sorry for everything I did. Adana looked at Ife, her heart filled with a mix of emotions. She had longed for this moment, for the chance to start anew. I forgive you, Ife, she said softly. We can't change the past, but we can choose how we move forward. Let's be sisters, truly. Ife smiled, a genuine warmth in her eyes for the first time. I'd like that, she replied. I'd like that very much. The bond between them, once fragile and strained, was beginning to solidify. It wasn't perfect, and it would take time to fully heal, but they were both willing to put in the effort. They had learned that love wasn't something that needed to be fought over, it was something that grew stronger when shared. After their transformative stay in the village, the family returned to Lagos with renewed spirits. The once palpable tension between Ife and Adana had dissipated, replaced by a budding friendship. The mansion, which had felt cold and oppressive at times, was now filled with laughter and warmth. Chief Olawu noticed the change in his daughters and felt a profound sense of relief. He had always believed in the power of love and family, and now he saw that belief reflected in the harmony that was beginning to take root in his home. He was proud of the way Ife had taken responsibility for her actions and how Adana had shown grace and forgiveness. Adana, for her part, threw herself into her studies with renewed vigor. She was determined to make the most of the opportunities that had been given to her. Chief Olawu, recognizing her potential, hired private tutors to help her excel in her education. Adana's days were filled with learning, mathematics, literature, science, and history. But she also made time for the things that brought her joy, such as painting, music, and spending time with the people she had grown to care about. Ife, too, found new interests. She began to volunteer at local charities, helping children who, like Adana, had lost their families. This work gave her a sense of purpose and fulfillment that she hadn't felt before. She started to understand that there was more to life than wealth and status, that true happiness came from giving and connecting with others. As the months passed, the bond between the two sisters deepened. They shared their dreams, fears, and hopes with each other, and supported one another through the challenges they faced. Ife learned to appreciate Adana's resilience and wisdom, while Adana admired Ife's courage to change and grow. One day, as they sat together in the garden, Ife turned to Adana with a thoughtful expression. "Adana," she began, "have you ever thought about what you want to do in the future? I mean, beyond your studies?" Adana smiled, her eyes brightening at the question. "I have, actually. I want to use my education to help others, maybe start a school or an organization that supports children who've lost their families, like I did. I want to give them the same chance that I was given." Ife nodded, deeply moved by Adana's vision. "That's a beautiful dream, Adana. I'd love to help you make it a reality." Adana looked at Ife, gratitude filling her heart. "Thank you, Ife. That means a lot to me." The sisters spent the rest of the afternoon discussing their plans, their ideas intertwining and growing into something bigger than either of them had imagined. They realized that together, they could achieve great things, things that would not only change their lives but also the lives of countless others. The bustling city of Lagos was preparing for one of its most celebrated events, the Festival of Unity, a grand celebration that brought together people from all walks of life to celebrate the rich culture and heritage of Nigeria. The streets were adorned with colorful banners, and the air was filled with the sounds of drums, flutes, and laughter. It was a time of joy, community, and togetherness. For Adana and Ife, the festival represented more than just a cultural event. It was a symbol of the unity they had found as sisters, and they were eager to participate in the festivities together. Chief Olawu, too, was looking forward to the celebration. He had always been a strong supporter of the festival, believing that it was a powerful reminder of the strength that came from embracing diversity and working together. On the day of the festival, the mansion was abuzz with excitement. The staff prepared a feast of traditional dishes, and the girls dressed in vibrant, beautifully embroidered outfits that reflected the colors and patterns of their heritage. Adana wore a deep blue dress adorned with gold accents, while Ife's outfit was a bright, fiery red. They both wore matching girly headpieces, symbolizing their unity and shared purpose. As they made their way to the festival grounds, the girls marveled at the sight before them. The streets were alive with dancers, musicians, and performers, each showcasing their talents in a dazzling display of culture. Stalls lined the sidewalks, offering everything from handmade crafts to delicious street food. The air was thick with the scent of jollof rice, suya, and fried plantains, making their mouths water. Chief Olawu led the way, his daughters by his side, as they made their way through the crowd. They were greeted by friends, neighbors, and even strangers who recognized the chief and were eager to offer their respects. It was a reminder of the deep roots that connected them all, a bond that transcended wealth, status, and background. As the sun began to set, the festival reached its peak. A large stage had been set up in the center of the square, where performances and speeches were held. The crowd gathered, eager to witness the evening's main event, a traditional dance competition that featured groups from different regions of Nigeria. Adana and Ife watched in awe as the dancers took to the stage, their movements fluid and graceful, telling stories of love, struggle, and triumph. The rhythm of the drums pulsed through the air, drawing everyone into the energy of the performance. At the end of the competition, a group from the Igbo region was declared the winner. The crowd erupted in cheers, and the dancers, beaming with pride, took their bows. Chief Olawu, who had been invited to present the prize, stepped onto the stage with a wide smile. As he handed the trophy to the leader of the dance group, Chief Olawu took a moment to address the crowd. Today, we celebrate not just our rich culture, but also the spirit of unity that binds us together. It is this unity that makes us strong, that allows us to overcome challenges and build a brighter future. Let us always remember that we are stronger together. The crowd erupted in applause, and Adana and Ife felt a surge of pride for their father. His words resonated with them deeply, reinforcing the bond they had worked so hard to build. As the night wore on, the festival continued, with music, dancing, and laughter filling the air. Adana and Ife danced together, their hearts light and their spirits high. They knew that the road ahead would not always be easy, but they were ready to face it together. As they toured and spun under the starry sky, they felt a profound sense of belonging, not just to each other, but to something greater, a family, a community, a legacy. They were sisters, bound not by blood, but by love, respect, and a shared determination to make the world a better place. And in that moment, as they danced in the glow of the festival lights, they knew that they had found something truly precious, a new beginning, filled with hope, unity, and endless possibilities.